Good afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon edition of Kivumbi 2017. My name is Michelle Ngele. It is an afternoon full of expectation for the commencement of the hearing of the presidential petition 2017, which is expected to kick off at the Supreme Court this afternoon. We'll start this bulletin with the ongoings at the Supreme Court, however, where our reporter Sophia Wanuna is pitching camp. The hearing of that presidential petition expected to kick off this afternoon. But a few changes have been given, with the Supreme Court now announcing they will only be holding the rulings of the interlocutory applications that were made at the pre-trial conference last night. That ruling, or those rulings rather, will be given at 7 p.m. tonight, while the official hearing is expected to kick off at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Let's now head live to the Supreme Court, where our reporter Sophia Wanuna has been pitching camp. Sophia, bring us up to date with the latest developments.
Good afternoon, Michelle. The latest is what you have just highlighted there, that there have been a few changes that have been made right now by the Supreme Court. Information we're getting from the registry here at the Supreme Court is that the ruling on the applications that had been made before the Supreme Court judges, they were meant to rule at 2 p.m. this afternoon. That has since been moved to 7 p.m. this evening. And the hearing will commence tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And then there was the decision that was to be made around the issues that will be coming before the Supreme Court judges for actual determination in as far as the petition is concerned. And we're understanding and hearing that what will be happening is that the parties will be allowed to present submissions on these particular issues, the proposed issues. So NASA, for example, had 24 issues, the first, second, and third respondent having 2 issues each. And so each of the parties will be able to file those submissions. And then now the judges will determine what are the actual issues, specific issues that will be coming for determination before them. Because remember, the judges are now seized of determining those matters because the parties during their forum, which they were supposed to agree, were unable to agree. So when they appeared before the judges yesterday, during the pre-trial conference, they did say that they had disagreed. And when that happens in such a situation, then the judges are to decide on the issues for determination during the petition. Michelle.
Was this a unanimous decision, Sophia? Because we understand that NASA leaders, for example, were expected to hold a vigil or prayers outside the Supreme Court this afternoon for that presidential petition.
Yes, they were meant to hold a vigil here at the Supreme Court. We spoke to Dagoretti North, a member of Parliament. That's Simba Arati. He was the advance team, if you like, coming to ensure everything was okay. But we now will wait clarity on whether they still intend to come here now that the hearing begins tomorrow. But we understand that perhaps they will still seek to hold that vigil because the argument, as we heard from Simba Arati moments ago, is that the police should not, because remember the commander, Nairobi County Police had indicated such vigils should not be taking place around the vicinity of the Supreme Court. But they argue that when President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy had their cases at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, they had their supporters go there. They sang right outside the court. They prayed right outside the court. And that it's the same thing they are seeking to do, that double standards, according to Arati and NASA, should not be applied in this particular case. In fact, Arati went ahead to invite Jubilee supporters to join them so that they can also pray for their parties, because he says that everyone would want to have the court rule in their favor, and so that these prayers are to pray for wisdom and, in his words, the Holy Spirit to guide the judges.
Well, the Supreme Court, Sophia, only has 6 days to finish with this presidential petition. They were expected to begin today. So beginning the rulings, or the hearing rather, tomorrow would reduce their time by about 1 day. Wouldn't this mess with the timelines the Supreme Court is working with?
Definitely the question of time is one that has come up time and again, Michelle. Even yesterday during the pre-trial conference, you remember a lot of the submissions and counter-arguments that we heard were around the timelines, the strict, stringent timelines that all the parties, the judges, the court is contending with. But at the end of the day, it is one thing to hold, for example, the hearings today, but you're not really prepared. And I suppose the judges have just come to that realization, because we did see the parties yesterday, both the petitioner, the first and second respondent, request that the hearings actually commence tomorrow. And Paul Mwite in particular cited that they would move faster, because then following the rulings that will be made on the applications before the court, they'd be able to realign, organize themselves, because that perhaps would have a bearing on whatever systems and submissions they had put in place. So perhaps the thinking going into this, Michelle, this afternoon, is to just ensure when the hearings begin tomorrow, then it will be a session starting off on a foot of really preparedness on all parties, because even the judges are dealing with quite a lot other than the applications they must decide on. Now there's also the issue, as I was talking about earlier, of the actual questions for determination, the prayers, because the parties were unable to do so. So it's also a lot of work on their side, and it's something that must be treated with a lot of care, because it's an important matter. It's about which way Kenya, after this, will they uphold the ruling? Rather the decision, the announcement and declaration of President Uhuru Kenyatta as president-elect, or will we be going back to another election, or what other direction would they be given after those 14 days lapse? Remember, the lapse on Friday, and Michelle, very important to note as well, and perhaps why this is being treated so carefully, is that the decision by the Supreme Court, it's final. It cannot be appealed. Whatever they decide by Friday, that is it, Michelle.
All right, and Sophia, before I let you go, as you said, the decision of the Apex Court is final. Some of the rulings expected to be given tonight based on the applications that had been filed yesterday are rather important. What would you say is one of the most hotly anticipated rulings on those interlocutory applications?
Yes, several rulings that are anticipated this evening at 7 p.m. now that we understand the ruling has been moved from 2 to 7. There is the applications that were made by those who are seeking to be enjoined as amicus curiae, or if you like, friend of the court. And friend of the court, as we've been mentioning, and perhaps important to repeat for our viewers who may not be aware, is a party that comes into a case, not as party to the case, not solicited by any parties of the case, but really coming in with information that seeks to help the judges, information that is helpful and has bearing on the case. So there are 4 of them, and the judges will be ruling on that. Remember, Attorney General Gideon Muigai is seeking to be a friend of the court. There's also the ICT organization or association, if you like, that are also seeking to be enjoined. Remember, ICT coming up as an important issue because there's another application on being able to audit the service of the IBC. The third and fourth applications on amicus curiae is from Charles Kanjamba, a lawyer. You also have the Law Society of Kenya. Then there are 4 other applications of those seeking to be enjoined as interested parties. Michael Wainaina, who is an independent candidate in the just concluded presidential election, is seeking to be enjoined, and he's supporting the respondent's case, in essence arguing that the August 8th general election was free, fair, credible, verifiable, transparent. And then Akuru Okot, who was also a presidential candidate on the Third Way Alliance, is supporting the case of the petitioner. He wants the election annulled. And then there are 2 more voters. That is Isaac Alucher, who had also sought to be enjoined in the 2013 petition but was unsuccessful. And there's Barasa Wafula, who is a voter as well from Bungoma. So these 8 particular applications will be dealt with. But more importantly as well, Michelle, on the matters that will be coming for determination this evening are those interlocutory applications that were made. NASA is seeking to look into the service and the logs of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And during the pre-trial conference yesterday, we heard submissions and the arguments that were presented by the petitioner. The petitioners arguing they probably only needed 2 to 3 hours to be able to do and conduct this particular exercise. However, The first and the second respondent were opposed to this, first citing the time constraint, according to them saying it will take 3 weeks, but also saying it would have some security implications if this system was opened up for audit. So that's one important one. We're waiting to see which way the judges will rule. Remember also the petitioner had requested to have the original Forms 34A, B and C. But you also have the petitioner seeking and having applied to have the written submission of the first and second respondents struck out. And the argument is that whilst the IEBC and the chair were able to present their written submissions on the day of the deadline by 11:30 p.m. here at the Supreme Court, they did not serve them as required before the midnight deadline. But the respondents' argument is that when they sought to serve them before the midnight deadline, they found their offices were closed. So again, we will see what the judges will rule on these matters.
All right, Sophia Onuna there at the precincts of the Supreme Court, where those rulings will be given later tonight. Remember, that is a news just in, a change of plan with regard to the commencement of that hearing of the presidential petition. The Supreme Court has now decided to only give rulings on the applications made by the three parties last night at that pre-trial conference, while the official commencement of the hearing will begin tomorrow at 9 a.m. Now, away from that, top NASA leaders this morning attended a church service at the All Saints Cathedral in Nairobi. The leaders, who included Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, Moses Wetangula, have filed a petition at the Supreme Court challenging the re-election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. On your screen now are live pictures of the NASA core principals just outside the All Saints Cathedral. Remember, this is just after news came from the Supreme Court that the commencement of the hearing of the presidential petition will be happening tomorrow at 9 a.m. So let's cross over to the All Saints Cathedral and listen in.
Prayer. As you know that our country is going through very difficult times. Most Kenyans are hurting because of what happened on the 8th of this month. And Kenyans are crying for justice. Kenyans are craving for justice. And that's the reason why we came here to pray with the rest of Kenyans. There are also some Kenyans who are praying just in the park behind the Serena Hotel. And from here we are going to join them also in prayer. As you see that the court process has started, and everybody's praying that justice will be done at the courts. Today's topic here of prayer was about the journey to Canaan. And they said, as we said last time, we crossed the Jordan on the 8th. We are on our way to the city of Jerusalem. We have passed Jericho. We are going to Jerusalem. And I want to assure Kenyans that we shall get to Jerusalem. That nothing, no force on earth will prevent the will of the people of Kenya to liberate themselves from political repression, political oppression, from corruption, from deceit, from misrule that has characterized the government of Jubilee for the last 4.5 years. Thank you.
So you do believe that the journey to Canaan is still very much on course?
Yes, we are on course. We are on course. You know, it was never an easy journey, even by the Bible, the story of the Bible. Remember when they met those huge giants in Canaan, but the Lord overpowered them and put them in the hands of the Israelites, and they were able to reach their destination. So our journey is still very much on course.
Last time we checked, you had plans of launching a vigil outside the Supreme Court, which was declined by the police. What's the way forward as it stands now?
It was not us. I mean, we don't seek any permission. The law is very clear. If Kenyans want to do something, they just notify the police. So that police officer does not understand the law. He is notified so that he can provide security. Not that he can give permission. We are past that. We did away with the Public Order Act. We did away with the Chiefs Authority Act. Those laws no longer exist in our country. It's a free country. There's freedom of association, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, all guaranteed in our Constitution. That police officer needs to read his law better.
There was the proposal by some of the NASA members that the elected leaders should not go for the swearing in of the
No,
class.
that is not the document.
The member gave you tomorrow.
Well,
That has been NASA Principal Raila Odinga speaking to the press immediately after the church service at All Saints Cathedral. They've spoken on a raft of issues concerning their march or their vigil outside the Supreme Court. Raila Odinga says that they do not require any permission whatsoever for them to hold a vigil outside the Supreme Court. Now, he has said that the Chiefs Act was abolished with the coming of the new constitution, and says that as it stands now, all that they need to do is just notify the police of their intention to hold a vigil outside the Supreme Court and go ahead to it. He has also reiterated that the journey to go to Canaan, that is his political drive towards gaining presidency in Kenya, is still on course. Right now, we understand the Supreme Court, every party that is engaged in that duel has already tabled its evidence and its material before the Supreme Court. And what is left now is for the courts to decide which way forward. But we also understand, according to the intrigues around politics, is that the members of parliament are supposed to be sworn in starting from Tuesday, 2 days from now. And he says that he has declined to touch on the matter. But we were told that actually there were talks between members of parliament elected under the NASA banner not to attend the swearing-in ceremony. But right now we'll be following up to see what will be transpiring outside the Supreme Court. Back to you.
That there is Mark Namaswa, a reporter following events at the All Saints Cathedral, where NASA co-principals, including Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka and Moses Wetangula, were holding prayers ahead of the hearing of the presidential petition. Raila Odinga there saying the plan to go to Canaan is still very much on for the opposition. Remember, opposition supporters were also expected to hold a vigil outside the Supreme Court, a decision that had been opposed by the police boss, Japhet Koome. Raila Odinga there saying that plan is also still very much on. So we'll keep an eye on that right here on Kivumbi 2017. We'll take a short commercial break. Do stay with us. Still more on the other side.
This is KTN News.